Some of the things I wanted to talk to you about today were the couple projects that we got going on, one completed and one that's in process, looking at some of the energy usage in pork production systems. From the standpoint of cost, Larry's kind of already outlined this. I just took records from adult farm business management records in southern Minnesota last year and looked at the total cost to produce a pig in a farrow to finish operation, a wean to finish, or a feeder pig to finish. And you can see the total cost here. Here's the cost for electricity per pig, heating fuel. That works out to about 2% of the total cost of production was heating fuel and electricity. So again, reemphasize that we're not talking about a huge portion of the production costs, but it could be important in Larry's scenario in these contract growers. Also, it could be important in terms of the energy usage from what the market chains are talking about in terms of lowering the carbon footprint of our ag products. And that's kind of the basis of the whole emphasis in some of the projects we have here in Morris over the last couple years. Current practices on swine farms. First of all, we strive to maintain pigs in a thermal neutral zone. So a thermal neutral zone for the pig is not necessarily this temperature to this temperature. It moves depending on the size of the pig and who he's living with and what he's eating and so on and so forth. Basically, the definition of thermal neutral zone is where the pig's most comfortable. If he's too cold, he has to expend energy to stay warm. So shivering, huddling together, maybe change his activity, certainly increase feed intake. If he's too hot, he's got to expend energy to stay cool. So he's got to pant. Panting takes a lot of energy, and that's not productive energy. That's just trying to keep him cool and comfortable. It's not going towards growth of edible products. So that's our goal. So whether it's cold weather or hot weather, we're trying to keep him in that thermal neutral zone. In summer, we're talking about cooling. Larry's talked about this a little bit. Ventilation rates go up. We might have spray cools or drip cooling, basically putting water on those pigs so that we can keep them cool. The idea is that the water wets the skin, and then it takes the energy from the pig, the heat, to evaporate the water, and that's how the pig gets cool. The water temperature really doesn't have anything to do with it. It's the evaporation that's what we're after. Cool cells, these are on a lot of barns. Basically drawing air, incoming air through these wetted pads. It helps cool the air, and they're very effective. In winter, supplemental heat, basically we're talking about supplemental heat for suckling pigs, nursery pigs, maybe young growing pigs. But as Larry said, the pig itself is just a little furnace and creates a lot of heat, and we have to deal with that. So that led us to think about current practices in swine nurseries. Basically, when this is our research nursery here at the center, pigs come in at about 18 days of age. They weigh 13 pounds, something like that. They'll stay about 6 weeks. They leave the barn at 50 to 60 pounds, go on to finishing. When the pig is weaned, he's coming right off the sow. He's got a lot of changes in terms of diet and nutrition and new pen mates, new environment. And temperature, they're very vulnerable to temperature, so typically farms will run the barn at about 85 degrees Fahrenheit, run the room to satisfy the pig's temperature needs. Typically the room is constant temperature day and night, so we set it at 85, Larry's set point, or 87 or whatever, and it stays that way with those little cycling day and night. Then after about a week or so, the pigs is acclimated, they're getting over their weaning stresses and so forth, so then they kick in what they call ramping. And basically it's a computerized controller that says the set point today is 85. Tomorrow we want it to be 84.5. And so the computer just automatically drops the temperature and just keeps ramping it down till it hits 60 or 65 degrees when the pig is ready to go out to finisher. So that's kind of the typical approach. But there's been a concept called reduced nocturnal temperature, and this is work that Mike Brumm, Larry mentioned Mike before, when he was at the University of Nebraska back in the 80s. They said, well, what if we lowered nighttime temperature 11 degrees starting the second week after the pigs arrive? So make it cooler at night than during the day. What's that do to pig performance and energy use? They imposed that that lower temperature for 12 hours each day, starting at night. So it'd be like from 7 at night until 7 in the morning. And what they found was average daily feed intake improved 7%. And average daily gain, that increased feed intake drove a higher average daily gain. So pigs actually performed better with those cooler nights. And they saved their cost for propane and electricity, reduced about 16% by doing that. Kind of remember that number, stick it in your head. So this all looks pretty good. So as most producers and animal scientists said, so well, we did pretty well here, let's go a little further. So they ran a second study. They did the same thing, 11 degrees drop back at night, starting in at the second week. But this time, they imposed that for 16 hours, so have a longer period of cool. This time, they didn't see any effect on feed intake. They got a slight improvement in average daily gain, but they also had a little higher morbidity and mortality. A few more sick pigs, a few more dead pigs. Lots of research would indicate that dead pigs aren't worth much. So that kind of hurt this study, but they did save 19% in terms of their propane and electricity costs. So we're seeing a little bit of a trend here. And the reason that works is pigs prefer temperatures cooler at night. This is some work that Clover Bench and Harold Gagne did in Canada, where basically they took nursery pigs and they trained them to press a button if they want heat. And you know, I don't remember exactly, but there was a button over on the edge of the pen, and a pig is cold, he'd go over, he'd hit that with his nose, and it would turn a heat lamp on, and it'd be warm. Pigs are smart. Okay? So they let the pigs control the temperature in their pen. And what they found was that at night, pay attention to this middle line, this was the kind of the average temperature. At night, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, they wanted the temperature at about 24 degrees Celsius. That's what, about 76 or something like that. And then during the day, they ran it up to about 27.5, 28 degrees Celsius. That's about 6 degrees Fahrenheit warmer. So during the daytime they wanted it warm, at night they wanted it cool. So if you let the pig pick that, why wouldn't we try to impose that from a management standpoint? And here's just an example of the thermo-regulatory behavior of pigs. Which pigs in this picture, which side is most comfortable, right or left? The right side. They're laying under the heat lamp. They're kind of laying out flat. Pigs like to lay out flat on their side. Maybe touch somebody, but not scrunched up against him. These guys, this heat lamp's too hot. They're laying around the outside because it was too hot right under the lamp. If we had a picture of cold stress, they'd be piled one on top of the other. And we don't want that. So we want a situation like this, and pigs will tell us that when we manage a barn. I don't care what the thermometer says or anything, you look at the pigs and they'll tell you whether they're comfortable or not. So, why do we need to reevaluate this R&T approach? Well, back in the 80s and 90s, commercial implementation wasn't really practical. We didn't have computerized controllers to be able to control that temperature, drop it at night, and keep it up during the day. Design of nursery facilities have improved. Our fans are better. Our insulation or design is better. Heating costs can be significant. Remember, what, 2 winters ago, we had $7 propane around here. I had a lot of calls about this R&T data whenever propane was $7. And heat production of pigs has increased. About 10% over the last 10 to 15 years. Pigs have gotten leaner. They grow faster. They generate more heat. So we have more heat in the barn. And here's some estimates of what that heat production per hour would be at various weights. So we thought with the change in genetics, the new controllers, R&T was probably worthwhile looking at. So what we did is we imposed an R&T regime that we wanted to know whether it would influence pig performance and did it decrease consumption of fossil fuel. We had 4 universities, participate in the study. These were the folks that helped us out with that. And basically what we did is the control room, 86 degrees Fahrenheit at pig level, and we lowered that temperature 3.5 degrees Fahrenheit per week throughout the nursery phase, about a 6-week nursery phase. In the R&T room, for the first week, they were exactly the same, the 2 rooms. Beginning the second week, we reduced the temperature 11 degrees Fahrenheit from the daytime temperature, starting at 7 o'clock at night until 7 o'clock in the morning. 7 in the morning, the temperature would come back up to the daytime level. And then we had the ramping throughout the 6 weeks, same way. So here's just a schematic. Basically, if we start here at 7 o'clock in the morning, we put the temperature up to 86. It stays that way till 7 at night. And then we change the controller to drop the temperature 11 degrees and so forth. This is a theoretical graph. And basically the way we get the temperature cooler is we just stop the furnace from turning on. We don't, at 7 o'clock at night, we don't turn all the fans on to make it get down to 11 degrees. We just stop adding heat, and eventually the room just cools down gently until it hits the new low level, and then the furnace starts running again. So we had about 1,600 pigs, some details here. 3 universities actually contributed data in terms of pigs. We measured pig performance, weekly heat and electricity on a room basis. So we had 1 room instrumented and set up, measured pigs in control room, a mirror image room with R&T. What did we find? Overall pig performance, average daily gain 0.95 pounds per day, feed intake 137, gain efficiency 0.69. You can't get data any more similar than those 2. And that's not even rounding, that's exactly the way they shook out. Over 3 states. Fuel use. Whatever this is, orange bar. This is BTUs per pig day that were used in the control room versus the R&T room, numerically decline. Electricity use in kilowatt hours per pig day, a decline as well. Basically, this is about an 18% reduction in heating fuel and a 9% reduction in electricity use with the R&T treatment. We didn't have statistical significance, they're just numerical trends. If we look at each station that contributed data, I don't know what Nebraska was doing, they didn't have any savings in heat fuel, but they had a reduction in electricity, and then both at Missouri and here in our nursery, we had sizable reductions in heating fuel per pig in the R&T and reductions in electrical use. So basically we had no effect on performance. Morbidity and mortality, didn't tell you, was not different. They were exactly the same between the 2 rooms. We saved 18% on heating fuel and 9% on electricity. So like the Nebraska group, we said, well, this worked. Let's go a little further, see if we can eke a little more out of the system. So we did a more aggressive, basically ran the same study with a little more aggressive treatments. Same folks, except Ohio joined us with a commercial nursery for the second study. We had over 4,000 pigs, 10 trials conducted at 4 stations, so we got 4 states across the Midwest. Again, we measured pig performance and weekly room electricity and heating fuel. Same treatment and control, 86 degrees Fahrenheit at pig height with the ramping. Only this time, we started the control treatment for the first 4 days, and then on day 5, we started R&T. Last time we waited a week. This time we went day 5, and we went 15 degrees instead of 11 degrees. From 7 at night till 7 in the morning, same kind of ramping. Basically the same pattern, same approach as the last study. Here's a temperature plot from one of our nursery rooms to show you a little bit of how those temperatures actually panned out. The red line is the control, starting at day 1 on entry of the study, and then basically you see here the decline is the ramping that we had designed in. We go out here at day 5. Temperature's going along pretty steady, about the same as the control room, which is what we expected. Then we turned on the reduction at 7 o'clock at night. We have a real rapid drop. But then we get out here, then it starts to slowly decline. And we didn't hit our 15-degree lower temperature until about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And we could do that for a while. And then as we go further out, we can't get 15 degrees cooler. From about day 11 on, in these rooms, a furnace did not run at all in the R&T room. The pigs were generating so much heat, we didn't need to use fossil fuel, and we couldn't get it cooler, and we were not going to run fans to drive the temperature down. So that was pretty informative to us to show how important pig body heat is. Pig performance, again, not exactly the same numbers as before, but awful close. No difference in gain, no difference in feed intake, no difference in gain efficiency. Mortality rates in the control room were 1.5%, and in the R&T room it was 1.2%. So no big difference. Here's a plot of the treatments from a weekly standpoint. The control daytime is this line here, and the control nighttime is here, so they were pretty close, which we expect. The R&T room daytime was a little bit lower than we had hoped, but then the R&T at night, from day 4 on, we have this big drop, and this is the kind of the differential that we had hoped to keep, but as we get further out, we can't keep that differential because these pigs are generating so much heat. The fuel use, kind of the same picture. We have a significant reduction in heating fuel as well as electricity. This is about a 29% reduction in heating fuel, and this is a 19% reduction in electricity use. And I show you this data, these data just across 4 states, 4 different stations. Every single time we get a reduction in the fuel use, and in every station there was no differences in pig performance. So we feel pretty confident that this is a consistent response. If we put some economics to it, kind of the barroom napkin kind of economics, basically using propane at $1.60 a gallon and electricity at 10 cents a kilowatt hour. Over the whole study we saved about $1.73 per pig out of the nursery. Ohio learned something. They were blowing through a whole lot of propane in there, and it was a commercial nursery, and they were happy to do the study just to see how much propane they were using. So estimates just from greenhouse gas emissions, got some of these numbers. Joel helped me with some of these. Basically from propane we saved about 103,000 BTUs. Over the 35-day study period, about 1.13 gallons of propane. That it works out to about 15 pounds of CO2 equivalent. Do the same similar calculation on electricity. Comes down to 15.5 pounds of CO2 equivalents per pig out the nursery. So there was some positive environmental impacts. So this second study, basically our R&T system didn't reduce pig performance. We had pretty significant savings in heating and electrical fuel use, and we had some reductions in greenhouse gas. Where are we going to go in the future? Well, we'll R&T work in a wean to finish barn. So the barns that Larry talked about. I think the window is probably pretty narrow, and it's probably tough to implement there, but that's something we need to look into. And maybe even an early finishing. I'm kind of skeptical it'd have to be really cold, but there might be some value there. Probably more importantly is we probably need to be reevaluating the thermal requirements of the pig. Some of those data are older. Some people have done some of that work, but a lot of our capability in this country to do that work has been eroded by budget cuts and those kind of things. You can't just go up and down the street and find an indirect or a direct calorimeter to put a pig in to find out what kind of heat production he's doing. So we might have to get creative in how we do that. Michigan State has a set, but So with that, I'd just like to acknowledge the support of the Minnesota Pork Board and the LCCMR for funding some of this work, parts of it. Adrian Hilbrands is our assistant scientist, and of course Kirsten and Eric on the farm data. Our crew here at the farm, my collaborators in other states are an important part of this study. So with that, I hope everything is clear. And if you have any questions, now's the time to bring them up.